In this lesson, we are going to continue working on listening for the key elements in a story, in a speech, in a presentation. Remember, those changes in tone, pitch, volume, those mean that they are key elements. They mean that they're very important to the information that the speaker is trying to give you. So in today's article, I want you to listen in for those key terms and see if you can figure them out and remember those key details for our questions later. Okay, let's get started with our story here, our article. 19-year-old Zara Rutherford becomes the youngest woman to fly around the world solo. Most 19-year-olds are still trying to perfect their driving skills, but Zara Rutherford had her eyes set a little higher. The British-Belgian teenager wanted to be the youngest woman to fly around the world solo. On January 22, 2022, Rutherford fulfilled her lifelong dream when she successfully landed her two-seat ultralight aircraft back at Kortrijk-Wevelgem Airport in Belgium, where she had departed from 155 days ago. Rutherford's historic flight broke Shasta Weiss's 5-year-old record. The Afghan-American pilot was 30 when she completed the solo around-the-world excursion in 2017. The teenager is also the youngest person to make the epic journey across in a microlight plane and the first Belgian to do so. With this successful circumnavigation, I am happy not only to break the Guinness World Record of youngest woman flying solo around the world, but also to reduce the gender gap by 11 years between the current male record holder, Travis Ludlow, at 18 at the time of his record, and the previous female record holder, Shasta Weiss, who was 30 when she completed her Dreams Soar around the world flight, Rutherford wrote in her blog. Rutherford's epic journey spanning 5 continents and 52 countries began on August 18, 2021. Her route traversed over the UK, Iceland, Greenland, Canada, US, Latin America, and then back north via Alaska to Russia, Korea, Indonesia, India, the Middle East, Europe, and then finally Belgium. The young pilot had expected to complete the journey by mid-October 2021, but faced numerous unexpected delays along the way. They included an unscheduled stop in Redding, California due to wildfires, and a month-long stop in Nome, Alaska to renew her Russian visas. Inclement weather in Siberia cost Rutherford another month while obtaining the appropriate exit aviation documents in Indonesia tacked on another 2 days. The young pilot also faced several challenges while in the air. Since the airplane was not certified to fly using instruments, Rutherford could only maintain visibility by avoiding clouds. As a result, the teenager had to sometimes fly as low as 1,500 feet, putting her in the crosshairs of inclement weather. In Singapore, I got quite close to a lightning strike, she told NPR. When flying from Iceland to Greenland, Rutherford lost radio contact with her ground team for much of the 3-hour flight. The delays also resulted in her having to cross over Russia in harsh, sub-zero temperatures. The hardest part was flying over Siberia. It was extremely cold, and if the engine was to stall, I'd be hours away from rescue. I'm not sure I would have survived, she said later at a press conference. But despite the severe difficulties, the determined young pilot never gave up on her dream. Okay, now that we've finished our article, let's take a look at our listening comprehension questions to see how much of this we actually remember. Well, you're not going to see it. You're going to see them later, but let's answer those questions now. Question number 1. What was this article about? Well, we know this article was about Zara Rutherford and her new record of flying solo around the world. Question number 2. What did Zara accomplish? Well, just like we said in the last one, she flew around the world, but she was the youngest female to do it. So that's a pretty big accomplishment. That's straight from the story, too. She's the youngest person to solo fly around the world. Question number 3. Where was she from? She was from Belgium, right? She is a Belgian-born person. She's from Belgium. That was an easy answer, right? Question number 4. How is her new record different from the last? Well, now this one is an interesting question because you have to remember a number from there, from the article. And there was an important one that jumped out when we talked about the previous record holder. She was 30, and there's an 11-year difference between the two record holders, the previous record holder and Zara's new record. Zara's 19 years old. So how is her new record different from the last? Well, she's 11 years younger than the previous record holder. Question number 5. Were there any problems along the way? There were a ton of problems along the way, as you would expect, flying around the world. But in an article like this, in a story or a presentation where there's lots of key factors that keep coming up, a problem, a problem, a problem, sometimes we can forget them. But the important thing here is that you remember some of them, right? We remember the wildfires in California that stopped her from flying, and then the bad weather in Siberia, and then we remember the problems with the Russian visas. See, you don't need to be super specific. Those key words that we heard during the presentation, during the speech, those key things are all I said, right? Russian visa problem, bad weather in Siberia, wildfires. That's how you remember the key details here. Question number 6. How does she feel about this flight? Well, now I imagine she feels great, but the key thing here was the very last sentence of the article, right? What did she say? She said, never give up on your dreams. So even though it was a problem, even though it was difficult, even though she had a hard time, she never gave up on her dreams, and she wants people to feel that kind of way. So that's how she feels. She feels optimistic, she feels positive. You can say any words that you want that match the idea of that last sentence. Okay, let's go back into our screen share, and we're going to take a look at this article together to see these keywords jump out at you, okay? And you're going to notice in this article, okay, that the first lesson had a lot more bolded words. And why is that? Why is this one different from the last one? The last one was an article about a historical piece. It had lots of facts, right? This one is an article about something that happened. Yes, there are facts in it, but there's a lot of stuff that she just said. There's a lot of stuff that continues the story, but isn't as important as a fact. And the more you practice, which is key in listening comprehension, practice. The more you practice, the more you can distinguish, you can tell the difference between important information and less important information. So let's take a look at this. You're going to see not very many bolded words. Right here, the whole first sentence. Most 19-year-olds are still trying to perfect their driving skills. That is not important to our story, really. It's just an opener. Remember, this is an article. Some speeches will have a joke or some little story to catch your attention. That's all this is. Is it relevant to the story, to the information? No. So there's nothing bolded. There's nothing we needed to learn or remember. But Zara Rutherford, okay, person's name, had her eyes set a little higher. Her eyes set a little higher. That doesn't say anything. But Zara Rutherford's the name, so we should remember the name. The British-Belgian teenager, okay. Now we know who she is, wanted to be the youngest to fly around the world solo. Well, why didn't I bold this? Because it was in the title. It was known from the context. If you're going to a speech about cars, you don't have to highlight that. You don't have to listen for the word cars. You know what you're listening to, right? So some details are just a given. We know these already, so I didn't bold it here. We didn't have to. On January 22nd, 2022, there's so many twos here. What are the chances that this date is super important in any upcoming conversation? That you must remember it? Very low. Very low. Key dates, unless it's like something of historical significance, we can easily just look up on our phones. So be realistic. This is important for the story, sure, but is it something I need to remember for the rest of my life? No. Do I need to remember when, some crazy thing in history happened? Yeah, sure. That's common knowledge, but this would not be considered common knowledge, historical information. So I didn't highlight it. Rutherford, same name, still remember her, fulfilled her lifelong dream when she successfully landed. Oh, you heard my pitch. My tone went up, right? My volume increased when I said successfully landed during the initial story. Because, well, hey, she succeeded. Yes. She successfully landed her 2-seat ultralight aircraft. It's not important. She landed. We know what you do. You land something that flies. Okay? So don't remember too much information, or you'll forget too much information. We have to remember key bits. She successfully landed where? The airport's name. Crazy. Didn't matter. Where'd she land? Belgium. So what did she do? Rutherford landed Belgium. Yes. Where she had departed from 155 days ago. Okay. So if in this whole piece right here, we can come all the way up here. Look at that. I highlighted all of it here. What's important in that whole bit? Rutherford landed in Belgium after 155 days. That's what all of this means. That's it. So, different styles of stories, different styles of information. We take out different pieces of information as things that we must remember. Okay. Rutherford's historic flight broke Shasta. I'm sorry if you're listening to me, Shasta. Please tell me how to say your name. I think it's Shasta Wise. I'm not sure though. So we know this record holder's name. This is another name we should remember the name. Rutherford broke her record, and she was an Afghan-American pilot, was 30. The main thing here was she was 30, okay? And she completed a solo around the world. Yes, it's the same thing that the other girl just did. It's the same thing from the title. We don't need to bold it again. It's common knowledge now. The teenager is also the youngest person to make the epic journey in a microlight plane. Well, that's interesting information, okay? It's a different kind of plane, and the first Belgian to do so. Right here. With this successful circumnavigation, big words, but we know what it is. She went around the earth. I am happy not only to break the Guinness World Record. Look at that. Guinness World Record. Capitalized words, proper nouns, are things that we probably should remember. They're key elements, right? Break the Guinness World Record of what? Solo fly around the world. Ooh, that should be bolded. Silly me. The youngest woman flying solo around the world. And also reduce. So when I said this back the second time, reduce the gender gap by 11 years. That actually, I added more emphasis to that. So we should bold that part. Reduce the gender gap, because this whole thing here was about the fact that she broke the record and dropped that age gap from the boy who finished it when he was 18 to her by 11 years. That's a pretty big jump. That's significant. We can remember that. But see all this right here? None of this mattered. at the time of right? It's all unnecessary to the topic that we're listening to. So there's nothing to bold out. Rutherford's epic journey spanning 5 continents. Please tell me you knew there were 5 continents. You remembered that. Please tell me you remembered that. 5 continents and 52 countries. When I read this, I said those loud. Those are things you definitely should have remembered, right? They jumped out at you. I made a point of saying them high. 5 continents and 52 countries. That's why when you hear salespeople on the TV, they say these important and amazing things about their product really loud. It chops, it slices, it dices, right? It tells you all these key elements that you need to remember. So the important part here was 5 continents and 52 countries. Began on August 18th. That didn't matter. And then I did not emphasize any of the countries because it's a huge list. You're not expected to remember a huge list. You know? Everything had a pause to it because there's a comma, but it wasn't exactly important. After, the 5th or 6th country, you're just like, okay, she flew over a lot of countries. See what I mean? It became less important because there were so many of them. Let's keep going. The young pilot had expected to complete the journey, but faced numerous expected delays. So we had problems. There was an unscheduled stop, a month-long stop, renew visas, wildfires, inclement weather in Siberia. See that? Those all jumped out at you. Those were part of those questions we had. They were important information. You know this because all of this is all about challenges. So we need to remember something about those challenges. Look at this, so much that I couldn't even copy it all. It's almost an entire page about the problems and troubles and difficulties. So we needed to remember some of those. The young pilot also faced several challenges while in the air. You hear that? The young pilot also faced several challenges while in the air. Several challenges while in the air. You can hear the pitch change, the tone change, the volume change. And it raised it up and made those important. Let's keep going down here. At the very end, the hardest part, we emphasized it. The hardest part was flying over Siberia. It was extremely cold. There's that adjective again. If the engine was to stall, I'd be hours away from rescue. I would not have survived. That's pretty important information. If my plane stalled, I would have died. But at the end of it all, never gave up on her dream. Dun-dun-dun. Positive ending. See, when we look at these comprehension problems, we have to think to ourselves, what is the most standout information available to us? And we also need to learn through practice to distill, to take out just the key pieces, because you cannot remember everything. You can't. Anyone who says you can is crazy, or some kind of genius with their memory. You can't remember all of the details, so you have to get very good at listening for those audible cues when a speaker changes their tone, changes their speed, changes their pitch, and you say, that word was important, that idea was important. I should remember something about that idea or that word. That is the key thing that you need to learn and practice and get better at to improve your listening comprehension. And this isn't just for schools. This is for work. This is for daily life, you know. I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you for the next lesson. Goodbye.